Hey guys, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I wanted to come on here today and share with you guys this art journal page that I did using the lyrics of the Crosby, Stills and Nash song, Our House. I have been having the song in my head for the last several months. I picked up these super cute building digis from a digi store called the Stamping Boutique, which I will link to in the description box below. And I colored them up with my Copic markers, and I finally got around to using a lot of the supplies that were donated to me by DecoArts through the DecoArt Helping Artists program. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy watching this process video. I'm creating a base for my art journal page using some 12 by 12 paper. The music note paper is from the Dear Lizzie Neapolitan collection, and that green kind of polka dotty splattered paper is an Amy Tangerine paper from the sketchbook collection. And I'm testing out the difference between Mod Podge and the DecoArt's DecoPaws matte glue sealer finisher. And I'll say that I think that the DecoArts product is thinner, it runs thinner and dries much faster, but that could also be a function of the fact that my Mod Podge is really old. I'm in the last little remnants of that. Here you see me opening up the DecoPaws matte medium from DecoArts, and I don't know if you can tell, but it is thinner and applies much easier. I'm just attaching these torn bits of paper and making sure that it's secure. It adds a little thickness to this base, which is what I want to do to be able to add a lot of wet mediums later on. Here I am decoupaging using the Mod Podge, just some heart cutouts from book paper. These were gifted to me by Alice Monique, who is Vintage Gal 18, and I think they're so sweet and wanted to add just a little bit of extra interest. These get hidden a lot later on, but I try to reveal them, and I'll show you that later. But I'm just randomly scattering them all over the background. I think they add a nice vintagey, little romantic flavor to this art journal page. Here I've decided to add some torn white pieces of paper. I'm just using the reverse side of that green polka dot paper, and I'm gluing those on just because I felt like the background was starting to look a little muddy and maybe a little too dark, so I wanted to add some pops of white. So I did want to mention here that both the Mod Podge and the DecoArt DecoPaws matte medium are both matte. That is, there's no high shine or gloss that will repel or resist wet mediums. And I use those intentionally because I knew I wanted to add paint layers and perhaps watercolor layers. I wasn't sure at the beginning, but I knew that I wanted lots of wet mediums that I didn't want resisting wherever I had used decoupage to create the base. Because I thought that green polka dot paper was really just too bright for a background, I decided to put on a thin coat of white gesso, and I'm using Liquitex gesso, which is very liquidy. It's almost just like a kind of unrefined paint, and I like the kind of translucent look that you can get from gesso just by applying a very thin coat like this. I'm also thinning out the gesso with little spritzes of water directly onto the paintbrush with just a little dab of gesso. This next part is a little bit of a fail, but I wanted to play with the DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. So I've mixed cobalt blue with titanium white and added probably about half water with those fluid acrylics to get this drippy effect. And I did like how well it dripped, and I liked actually the hue, but it just made my background look really too busy, I thought, and I didn't want the background detracting from the pieces that I was going to add later. But this is just me playing, and you guys get to see that the fluid acrylics do great for that really fluid, liquidy look. Now I thought I would add some tactical texture. I'm using the DecoArt Dimensional Effects, which is a paintable texture paste. And I am using a palette knife and just putting on a really thin coat using the Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous collection. This is called Bricked. And I'm making sure that I'm putting on a very thin coat. It's a very wet, gloomy, rainy day, and this texture paste takes anywhere from 4 to 12 hours to dry. Even with a thin coat, I think it took the full 4-hour minimum to dry. One thing I did want to mention about the DecoArt Dimensional Effects texture paste is that it dries almost clear. If you had mixed in acrylic paint or something like that into the texture paste and used that, then I think it would hold the color really well. Now, I really didn't like how those drips were looking busy and messy, so I mixed up more of the DecoArt fluid acrylics, the cobalt blue and the titanium white, made a slightly darker hue, as you can see here, and I added a touch of water, probably a third or so water to fluid acrylics, and I'm using a soft, just cheapo paintbrush to put some on. And then I'm going to get a more translucent look because I don't want to lose all of that visual texture and layering that I had added underneath. So I am wiping it away, not completely, but somewhat with a baby wipe. And you can see how when you do that, it really brings out the texture of that bricked stencil with the texture paste. When DecoArt says that texture paste is paintable, it really is. I love the way that it picked up this color. Again, I'm using a baby wipe to blend it out and to soften the paint marks. And then I decide I want the heart, those book paper hearts that I had decoupaged on, I want them to show a little more, so I'm going back in and vigorously actually removing the paint with that baby wipe just around the hearts, and it was amazing. With that decoupage over top, it really didn't damage the book paper hearts at all. Now I've taken another piece of pattern paper just from my scrap box and I've cut a little swoop to create a bit of a hill. And I'm inking the edges with just some green ink that I had. It's old. I think it's an American Crafts ink pad. And I'm just using a finger dauber to distress kind of over the edges and across the whole kind of hill that I'm creating. I was fairly pleased with the added color, but I thought I needed a darker edge, so I'm using Tim Holtz Distress ink in black soot and a blending tool to just ink the edges. And now I'm going to adhere this hill to the bottom of my art journal page with more Mod Podge. Now for the fun scene creating part. I got these digis of these super cute buildings from the Stamping Boutique. I'll put a link in the description box below if you guys want to check them out. But they have the cutest digis, and these 3 buildings I picked up and I colored up with Copic markers. And honestly, I'm so sorry, I don't remember the colors that I used because I colored these up so long ago. And all I'm doing is adhering on these buildings using more Mod Podge and creating this little village scene. Next, you're going to see me prepping the words from a Crosby, Stills and Nash song called Our House. I printed out these lyrics on my computer using a free font called Distressed Typewriter, and I just cut apart the words and I inked all around the edges with more Tim Holtz Distress ink in black soot. and I'm just decoupaging those lyrics on. I kind of figured out the spacing. I wanted it sort of centered at the top, and then you'll see at the bottom the last little bit of the lyrics. But I love this song. It's been bopping around in my head for the last several months. I feel so blessed and happy with the simple life that me and my hubby and our 2 dogs lead. So I sing the song to myself all the time. Of course, I change the words to fit our life with our dog. So the song goes, our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. And of course, I changed that to dogs. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. And our la 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 la. Okay, that's enough. I won't torture you guys more with my singing. And I adhered the la 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 la's down at the bottom of the art journal page. Now for this next part, I am outlining those hearts that were cut out of book paper and decoupaged on. And you can't see a lot of them, but those that you could see, I outlined with a black ink marker, and then I used a Faber-Castell white Pitt pen to color in the inside of the hearts. And that white Pitt pen is a little bit translucent, so you can actually still make out the book paper text. Now I'm outlining again with the black Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and this next technique I learned from Rosa Aquino. I just love this. You soften up that black edge with a wet Q-tip, and it makes it so artistic looking, I think. So I was thinking that these hearts kind of end up looking like puffy little heart clouds. I wanted a little bit more contrast from the hearts to the background sky, so I'm doing one more layer with the white Faber-Castell Pitt pen. And now I'm just doodling on a little poodle and a little Havanese to represent my biscuit and my bandito in the front yard of the little house. Now I'm taking the Faber-Castell white Pitt pen and going over the grout lines where I had used that Tim Holtz bricked stencil, and I think it highlights the texture of the stenciling with the texture paste, and it also lightens up the sky, which I really wanted to do. I didn't want the sky to look stormy or gloomy because this is such a happy song for me. And then lastly, I wanted to kind of carry through the black from the lyrics and the little silhouette dogs that I had doodled in throughout the whole art journal page. So I'm taking the black artist Pitt pen by Faber-Castell and going all around the edge of the entire art journal page, as well as along the hill. And then I decide I'm also going to do that all around the buildings. So I had a moment of horror as I outlined all the buildings with the black Pitt pen, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've ruined the whole thing all the way at the end. But then I went back over with a wet Q-tip like Rosa Aquino taught me, and it really softened everything up, and I really like how it makes the little buildings pop forward and gives that continuity of kind of color tone throughout the entire project. So that's it. That's my art journal page. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the process. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.